Okay, it's a blessed equinox. When you're joining me, if you're joining me on the day of this upload, I am actually broadcasting, recording this video at the precise moment of the equinox. So I'm in Arizona time. That is the fall equinox. So wherever you're watching me from, a blessed new cycle. And I'm excited to dive into the biology of Kundalini and talk about hormones because this is something that's really important, I feel, as we're going through an awakening, as we are activating our higher capacities, as new codes are coming in from the galactic, from the sun, from solar flares, through Schumann's resonance, all of this stuff. Our physical bodies are changing the hormonal output that we're getting based on what is needed for our evolution. I've heard others call it God hormones. So part of our biological awakening also includes the evolution of our hormones. So I'm excited to dive into what Jana Dixon has to say. We're on page 146 if you've been following along. Remember to like this video. It really helps the channel do well and helps other people find it. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and share if you feel like this information is pertinent. Okay, hormones. Metamorphic hormonal secretions are felt as ever more poignant longings and gratitudes. That pretty much says it all. Metamorphic hormonal secretions. Metamorphic hormonal secretions. That means the hormones that are in transition, the new hormones, the hormones you're using to be a new person, some of which aren't studied yet. They haven't been named or identified yet. Or they are at different levels of the ones we currently have, or they're a different structure of the ones that we currently have. We don't know yet. But we do know that they grant us new viewpoints, new ability to continue to see things a certain way. They're felt as ever more poignant longings and gratitudes. Ever more poignant. That's like significant, right? The fire of Kundalini is a circuitous contagion of cause and effect. Increased sex hormone levels intensifies Kundalini, and increased Kundalini upregulates both the level of the sex hormones and receptor sensitivity to them. So even your receptors get a boost. So they're even more sensitive. This circle of cause and effect is the basis of metamorphosis and spiritual birth, round and around. The metamorphic hormonal cycle probably follows a similar sequence to that of romantic love. Dr. Helen Fisher, who wrote The Anatomy of Love, says that testosterone might be the main active agent occurring during infatuation. Then the stimulant dopamine, the main active agent occurring, I read that line again. Testosterone might be the main active agent occurring during infatuation, so initial phases. And then the stimulants dopamine and norepinephrine coupled with low levels of serotonin during the romantic obsessive phase. Okay, so they've shifted again. Then oxytocin and vasopressin during the attachment, calm, and peace of long-term relationships. So she couples all those together. Similarly, I think that testosterone might be the predominant agent during the priming phase of Kundalini awakening, when the sexual heat is stimulated regardless of one's social context. Then during influx, shock, and transmutation phases, the activating hormones dopamine and norepinephrine again phase with vasopressin and oxytocin, giving one a sense of deep peace and connection. So they're making the connection of the same experience of falling in love is also a spiritual experience. And you hear like poets like Rumi and so forth, they're writing love letters to the divine. how appropriate for this biological assessment. Fisher says that orgasm is associated with higher levels of vasopressin and oxytocin, and a successful metamorphosis stabilizes bliss such that one could liken the state to a permanent brain orgasm. There is more information on the fascinating subject of the chemistry of love in Diane Ackerman's book, A Natural History of Love. So feel free to go and check that out, along with Dr. Helen Fisher's The Anatomy of Love, which we just quoted from. All the hormones are amplified during metamorphosis. This is awakening, right? From some of the symptoms, we can work out which ones are dominant at each stage. Okay, so track your symptoms on a calendar. And I love doing this. I did this with my own female cycle when I tracked when my moon came and went, and then I could find out when I was ovulating, but I also was keeping track of my emotional state. So I knew like how that correlated with a new moon, a full moon, my cycle, how they all went together. So she's suggesting as you track your symptoms, then they will fall in with your hormonal cycles and the seasonal month of the year. This way, each month of the year, you will know what to expect because you do get on a cyclical expression. The monthly and annual Kundalini cycle in males will track closely with testosterone, and with females, it follows the estrogen cycle. So we do use our natural body rhythms in our awakening. I mean, of course, that makes sense, but just thinking about we're using it as a jump off. We're wanting to evolve our hormonal release and experience something next. As I've said, the solar and lunar passage throughout the year is a huge factor in Kundalini flow and development, but so is large weather systems. The seasonal effect on Kundalini cycles is very apparent and easily explained. One of the factors in seasonal variability is the increased secretion of melatonin in winter, maybe that which reduces Kundalini, by down-regulating the production of sex hormones. And then conversely, the maximum light hours of July could be why July is maximum Kundalini month, because of the consequent reduced melatonin and increased sex hormone. Ooh, that tells me a lot about Arizona. I've been living in like a summer year-round, and some part of the summer hotter than the other part of the summer because it's fairly warm all year. We do get like a little bit of chilly nights in the winter in this low southern part of Arizona and Yuma. But excuse me, what I'm hearing is that our bodies and our evolution follows and tracks the weather cycles too, and that we down-regulate our awakening and we sort of go into like hibernation, integration when the winter months are coming on, and that correlates with the light and the temperature. And then when the sun is high, we go into a higher production of Kundalini. So we're like piling on the awakening symptoms and so forth. Which causes me to reflect being here over a season, like a whole seasonal year, and not really experiencing much of a down cycle. Let's say the extremities are pushed a little bit to the hotter end of the spectrum. And of course, I often think of the desert as a place to go and kind of purge and clear out and burn away. There's an alchemy that happens. And so it does correlate when you go, I'm going to go to the hot and dry, where it doesn't really down-regulate my cycle into a full rest mode. I'm going to just burn this stuff out. And why I also feel personally like the desert has had its way with me, and I need some like freshening up, some moisture temperature, some places that feel lush, and also to go into a winter cycle and allow my body to kind of rest with all of that is how I personally feel. So depending on where you've been living, you might notice different things. Okay, so we'll go into testosterone first. That's what Jana begins with here on the bottom of page 146. Testosterone must increase in both men and women during the mystic sexual heating period in the beginning and during the influx. So both get the testosterone. Sex hormones probably start falling off during the burnout, fall, substantiation, and recovery period. More testosterone is produced during puberty, also when in love, when exercising, during war to stimulate cells powerfully to prepare for action and to make the mind alert and enterprising. So often do people relate a period of intense sexual activation at the beginning of a Kundalini that I think testosterone must be fundamental in spiritual initiation. So she's saying she hears about this all the time. The sexual heat does indeed feel very similar to taking a hit of testosterone supplement. Although because it's something the body is instigating, the sexual heat of Kundalini is both more enduring, intense, and portentous. It can last for years, and it penetrates one's being completely. Consider that the several years of mystic heating that occurs prior to awakening is fueled by testosterone, and testosterone is the hormone of individuation and autonomy. Nature, in her wisdom, gives us this time of hormonal priming the pump, right? To prepare our lives for the coming awakening. So we can learn to even identify this heating period. And notice it's almost like an animal in heat. I hate to say it, but sometimes we see a human that's like that and we don't want to shame them. We want to recognize this is a heating period. This is pre their awakening, pre their popping. Testosterone, by increasing one's boundary definition and activity level, is exactly what we need prior to having our adaptive brain, the left, functions dissolve in great bliss. This increase in personal power forces us to push for life circumstances that feed and nurture us. Thus, we prepare our nest for the period when our resourcefulness is diminished, during the awakening, when you really need to be in that nest, right? If the years of testosterone priming didn't occur, we would simply be too vulnerable and exposed to external influences. The awakening, therefore, is more likely to be a psychotic breakdown if the self system is not strong enough to hold the heightened senses and expanded levels of perception into coherent whole. So I'm going to pause there for a moment because I want to talk about some plant medicines for a moment, because many people these days, and it's become more popular to use these medicines to blow one open so they can access really like an awakening. They can access like a full understanding for a moment, a glimpse of that, and then hopefully like have the tools to come integrate that. So, unfortunately, not everybody is prepared for that sort of blowout and psychic like unveiling of the wholeness. And she's speaking of, the hormones in the body. If we don't have the proper hormones, or we haven't really properly set the stage for the awakening. Or let's say, if you don't honor that time when the testosterone is pumping and you're feeling very much, like what you need to do to create that nest or to find that person, or that energy is doing that on purpose. And if that's thwarted or that's stopped, then when that Kundalini really rises, it's like you're left naked. Okay? And people are sort of like subjecting themselves to that situation, is what I'm trying to get at, by doing these plant medicines unprepared, or maybe when they're already in a pushed place. I have to be very grateful that, I guess because of my childhood, I felt very nurtured, and not everybody feels that way in their childhood, but my difficulties came later when I rejected all of that. But because I felt very nurtured, plant medicines blew me open, but I had like a place to land in myself, at least initially, like a place where I could come back to that I knew was me. But then as we evolve and those aspects of self start falling apart, every time we get a burst, that testosterone, like primal, powerful energy that can be like a new aha moment or a vision, to be able to run with that energy for a moment and use it to create. It's purposeful because the integration time will come. Like maybe you're doing something without really knowing why, or you have the vision but you don't really know how it's going to play out, but that testosterone energy is meant to create the safe space, which I think is really very beautiful. I hope that all was coherent. If the years of testosterone priming didn't occur, we would simply be too vulnerable and exposed to external influences. The awakening is more likely to become a psychotic breakdown if the self system is not strong enough to hold the heightened senses and expanded levels of perception. Since stress reduces testosterone, it might be that those individuals from stressful childhoods or under excessive stress during the state of an awakening are more likely to become unbalanced because their boundary definition and solid self-sense has been compromised by lack of testosterone throughout their lives. I'll say more about that in a minute. If the years of testosterone priming did not occur, we would be more likely an unconscious social environment, which is an antithetical to awakening. So that's more like parasitic or codependent. So the testosterone does help establish a sense of self and pushing away and a powerful like autonomy. So she's saying without that, like if there's stress in the childhood where you aren't able to do that and find that sense of self, then you end up becoming more codependent because you're continually looking now for that safe space. So not only does testosterone work on a biological level to rev up our cells, it's also operating in a social and a lifestyle department because it's preparing us how to be in society and how to be autonomous, or how to be independent in a way that you can still work with others but you aren't dependent, codependent. The same effect probably applies to reproductive relationships as well. So just as nature prepares the ground for children to be born through the hormonal modulation of social conditions, nature, the causal force of manifestation, hormonally she prepares a nest for the emergence of cosmic consciousness. The really interesting thing would be to study the triggering of metamorphic chemistry between the sexes through this hormonal and neurological change. This internal dynamo seems to be propelling us forcibly towards some unknown event, like the eros between lovers forcing union. Yet this enormous pressure is not so much to cause things to happen in the world, but is the very dynamic of evolution itself, melting us in the sacred marriage of inner unity. The marriage of the charges, the pole hemispheres, the sexes. We might be inspired to run here and there by this hormonal tension until we realize that we are simply cooking in God's melting pot. Knowing what is going on within us helps us to get some distance from our uproarious physiology and our emotions in order enough to enjoy the ride. Testosterone enhances aerobic metabolism and increases protein synthesis in males and females. We often think testosterone is just male, but it's that part, that powerful part in all of us. Low levels of testosterone are associated with muscle loss, weight gain, brittle bones, impotence, loss of sex drive, irritability, depression, and fatigue. Levels tend to drop as you get older at the rate of 1% per year after about what we've considered middle age. And a reason for low testosterone levels might include your receptors being blocked. So estrogen gets taken up by the receptor sites and blocks testosterone. So too much estrogen. That is where things like soy products and stuff can get in the way because they're producing artificial estrogen. So they might be blocking some of those receptor sites. Number two, testosterone becomes bound. It gets bound to sex hormones binding globulin, leaving only about 2% to actually do work. So number three, your production might have fallen. So high levels of estrogen do trick the brain to thinking that enough testosterone is being produced because of those receptor sites. And then stress and a sense of failure also reduces testosterone. So in anybody, stress and a sense of failure. So if you feel like you're a failure, your testosterone drops, your estrogen fills up more of the receptor sites. So yeah, low testosterone. Or number four, testosterone converts to estrogen. It changes, and DHT, excess estrogen, can increase production of that sex hormone binding globulin and block receptor sites again. So studies show that testosterone can induce mania or hypomania in about 10% of men. These are reports of testosterone patches and DHEA inducing manic episodes. In males, testosterone and its two metabolites, estradiol, or E2, and DHT, enhance the development of amygdala-kindled seizures. Since estradiol has the most potent kindling effect, anti-estradiol herbal intervention may have potential therapeutic value for males with epilepsy and might help reduce the severity of Kundalini awakenings. So that's in about 10% of men, this sort of low testosterone, or actually just testosterone acting like a kindling. Jed Diamond identifies a number of male hormonal cycles, including testosterone, which goes up and down 4 or 5 times in an hour. Okay, daily cycles with testosterone being higher in the morning and lower at night. A monthly hormonal cycle that is unique to each man. I have noticed this in some men, relating them to a women's cycle. Seasonal cycles with testosterone higher in November and lower in April. And then a hormonal cycle between age 40 and 55 in men that's been called the male menopause or andropause. Hormone changes depend on stressors in a man's life. Okay, and then continuing, in a study with male monkeys, mean serum prolactin levels increased significantly during June, July, August in all 6 animals. Peak levels were observed in August, September, and then levels decline gradually to reach a minimum in April and May. Mean serum testosterone levels closely paralleled the annual pattern of prolactin. Mean serum LH levels significantly decreased during the time when men's mean serum prolactin and testosterone levels were increasing, and they increased again at the time of decreasing mean prolactin levels, i.e. mean serum LH and prolactin were negatively correlated. Yeah, that doesn't mean much to me. These are just some studies that were done with testosterone, okay, in, what'd you say, animals, male monkeys. I don't like them doing studies on any monkeys at all, but we know that it happens. We're at 24 minutes, okay, and I'm gonna go on because of the equinox energy, because testosterone is normally associated with men and estrogen with women. I think would not be equinox friendly with me if I don't do both men and women hormones on this portal that we're sitting on during recording. So we're just going to read about estrogen and talk about it, and then we will complete the reading for today. Estrogens antagonize the effects of the parathyroid hormone, minimizing loss of calcium from the bones and thus help keeping bones strong. So estrogen does this. Recent research suggests that rising estradiol levels in estrus females causes a temporary but substantial increase in dendritic spine density of the hippocampus. Estrogen cycle and Kundalini. It appears that Kundalini increases around 8 days after the start of menses, probably due to the sharp peak of estrogen at this time. Okay, 8 days after your menses starts, Kundalini increases. During menstruation, a new follicle begins to develop in one of the ovaries. After menstruation ceases, the follicle continues to develop, secreting an increasing amount of estrogen as it does so. The estrogen level reaches its peak just prior to ovulation at around 8 to 10 days following menses, right? Then it drops off for ovulation and picks up at a lower level along with progesterone for the building of the uterus wall. Estrogen has been shown to increase seizures, kindling, and progesterone to decrease them. Both seem also to modulate bipolar mood states. Estrogen peak of the menses cycle effect on Kundalini might not be apparent during the peak of the awakening, for it would be hidden among the intensity of the various symptoms, but it appears to be a very regular phenomena, she says, during the quiet substantiation stage for years following an awakening. There's a nice chart showing the estrogen and progesterone levels during a 28-day cycle. If you go to this link, which is super long and it's on biology pages, users.rcn.com/jkimball.ma.ultranet/biology pages/s/sexhormones.html. Also found on page 149 of the text, okay? Protection from estrogen. Estrogen, estriadol, and estrone are produced by the aromatization of testosterone in the fat cells. So like they become aroma in the fat cells, skin, bone, and other tissue. Since testosterone changes into estrogen, one thing I focused on was to make sure the diet included substances that sop up extra estrogen so it didn't cause cancer. Increased free radicals plus increased hormones and a preoccupied immune system is a dangerous combo. So during a Kundalini awakening, men and women both should consider taking herbs to protect from excess estrogen, okay? High levels of estrogen may displace tryptophan from albumin, and albumin is the most abundant protein in the body. Okay, so you can lose some of this access to this protein by too much estrogen, she's saying, during awakening. Artificial steroid hormones may facilitate the growth of certain cancers, and we can maintain youthful hormone levels without them. The effect of meditation on the pituitary gland is one such way, okay, to regulate, and exercise will increase testosterone. To facilitate the heating phase of awakening, we can constructively manage our testosterone metabolism by taking herbs to unbind the blood testosterone, free up receptors, increase testosterone production, and aid in estrogen elimination. It's also helpful to include a cleansing program to detoxify the tissues, thus diminishing resistance to whatever circulating thyroid hormone is present. Women who are estrogen dominant have poor thyroid efficiency because estrogen increases the thyroxine binding globulin, the transport system for T3 and T4. The globulin bound thyroid is inactive. The more thyroid hormones are globulin bound, the less of the active form is available. So you want active form of thyroid hormones. So too much estrogen isn't good for that. Estrogen increases that binding so that you don't have the hormones available. Adequate amounts of natural progesterone reduces estrogen dominance. and consequently increases the biologically active form of thyroid hormones. So that's why it's often prescribed to take progesterone or use some progesterone promoting products. For many women, using natural progesterone along with committing to a healthy diet, using nutritional support, reducing stress, and adding exercise is most efficient. Saw palmetto has anti-estrogenic and anti-androgenic effects in addition to anti-inflammatory properties. So saw palmetto is good. Beyond acenturyonline.com, she gives a website, sells an anti-estrogen formula to inhibit the conversion of testosterone to estrogen and DHT. It contains DIM, chrysin, nettle root, bioperin. Other anti-estrogen products include quercetin, chasteberry, saw palmetto, methoxy isoflavone, and calcium deglucarate. Okay, those are hers listed. And then the last paragraph here, Avena sativa, or oat green juice coming from oats, frees globulin bound testosterone, making it bioavailable and preventing it from turning into DHT. So that's also oats. Okay, so non-GMO oats would be helpful. The percentage of testosterone held by globulin increases with age, or the resistance to life, right? Those taking oatgrass juice report higher free testosterone levels. So oatgrass juice is another way to take it, and an increase in strength and libido in both male and female. Works especially well with higher potency tribulus. Oatgrass juice is both a sex enhancer and helps recovery from nicotine addiction. So that's a really good one to mention again, the oatgrass juice, and you can find that in powdered form at probably your local health food store, and it's usually a green drink. Avena sativa is its Latin that you can find in supplement form, but it is just oats. So saw palmetto, nettle root, a good combo for freeing serum testosterone for men and women. So that's the Avena sativa, saw palmetto, and nettle root. And that's where we're going to end today on this Equinox reading of the Biology of Kundalini with Jana Dixon. Thank you so much for following along. This has been part 36, and we're just going to keep going, but we're getting through the book, and I'm enjoying having the conversation and activating this awareness in myself and in the collective. So thanks for being a part of this journey. Again, you can read it free on lulu.com or go to thebiologyofkundalini.com for Jana Dixon's site. If you want a personal reading or you want support in your awakening journey, that's what I'm here for. You can find me at blissinthehouse.com. Come back and see me here. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much. Much love.